Hello everyone, welcome back. It's Space Engineers Plus Me, episode 12. I'm Enigmius, and today we're starting a new ship. We're hopefully taking a lot of the lessons that we learned from the ore leach and applying them to a new ship it's basically going to serve the same purpose. We want a ship that we can use to extract minerals much faster than we could extract them manually, and then carry those minerals back to our outpost, unload them, recharge the batteries if we have to, and then go back out and do it again. Hopefully at some point we'll hit some of the rarer kinds of minerals. Silver would be nice at this point, as would platinum and of course uranium. If we found some uranium, that would be outstanding. But for now we're going to settle for a ship that we can go out and we can gather any kind of mineral with, whether it's iron or uranium, I don't care. The first step is getting ourselves set up with how we want to manage the drills. How do we want to place the drills on the ship so that they can do the mining that we don't want to do with our manual drill? And I realized that I wanted to go for quantity. And I may regret this because there's going to be a lot of drills on this ship, and I'm a little bit concerned that they might use too much power and cause a problem. because we can only fit so many batteries on a ship before the excess batteries are creating extra weight that requires extra thrusters that use the extra power that we thought we were saving. You know what I mean? It's one of those things that is kind of a balancing act. The more batteries you have on the ship doesn't necessarily always equate to a ship that can go farther and do more because thrusters are limited. So I'm basically building a grid comprised of small conveyor tubes and small conveyors. The blocks with the ports on them are the conveyors, and then the tubes are holding them all together. It's a little bit of redundancy. I could have taken a look at exactly how this whole thing was being laid out and just had a conveyor where every drill would be, and then one network of tubes passing through the whole thing so that there was no duplication of tubes. There were no extra paths from one conveyor to the next. But if something gets damaged, it's not necessarily a horrible idea to have a certain amount of redundancy in place so that the materials can get from a drill to the storage without having to worry about the one path that was available to it just got crushed when we slammed into a wall with one of the drills. Because it's me piloting, you have to keep that in mind. You never know. So there's a little bit of redundancy. It's using up a little bit of extra power having the extra conveyor tubes and conveyors in place. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Mostly it's the drills. When the drills are running, I think it's going to draw a lot of power, and that's going to be sort of the deciding factor in terms of how well the ship functions. If we're careful and thoughtful about how many thrusters we place and how we orient them, we aren't going to have to worry too much about collisions, hitting things that we didn't mean to hit. We need to make sure that we're maneuverable enough that if we get moving in a particular direction faster than we would like to, that we can slow, stop, potentially reverse if necessary to correct the situation. So when we put the thrusters on, that's going to be our key consideration. But for right now, we're just worried about making sure that whatever we place doesn't extend out from the sides of the ship wider than the drills. In other words, if we have this ship that's wider in the middle or wider in the top than it is down at the bottom with the drills, as we dig down into the ground, those wider sections are going to scrape on the rocks and get damaged. We don't want that. We want to make sure that everything above the drills is in close towards the center of the ship so that we don't worry about hitting things on the way down as we're mining. The other thing alongside that we have to kind of keep in mind is we are going to have to land this ship at some point, somewhere. The way that we're going to set up the connectors, it should be possible to dock with our outpost attached to a connector and not have to worry too much about whether or not we're able to land on landing gears somewhere. But we still want to make sure, like for example, if we're out in the middle of nowhere and we're running low on power, we want to be able to set down that ship on landing gears, lock it in position, and then take care of the power business however we have to in order to get it up and running again without having to just basically land it on the drills and hope that they all survive. That would be kind of a worst case scenario. So one of the things that I wanted to do was mess around a little bit with rotors and pistons and landing gears and make something that was retractable so that when we want to land, we can extend the landing gears, and when we want to move, we can retract the landing gears so that they're not in the way. In order to do that, we had to get the cockpit on the ship, and you see we placed it way up on this mast, so to speak. And I thought very briefly about making the mast out of pistons. just so that we could dig down into the ground, and then once the ship was completely submerged so that you couldn't see it from the surface anymore, just have this stupid little cockpit mast stick up out of the ground on a bunch of pistons. But I don't think that would necessarily be the best idea. So you can see now we've got basically a bunch of yellow blocks that are holding a couple of pistons, and on the end of the pistons is a landing gear. Those yellow blocks are attached to a piston themselves. The yellow piston extends, pushes the landing gear out over the side of the ship, and then the two red pistons extend, pushing the landing gear down past the drills, and that's how we'll be able to land the ship. That's the theory. So let's take a walk around, see what the ship looks like now, and talk about what we need to have on the ship before it's finished. So this is what it looks like now. We've done a few things since the pre-recorded segments, so to speak. Not a lot. I don't like to get too far ahead and then have people wondering just what the hell is going on. Specifically, we've added some solar panels up here in case you missed them previously. We've got 4. They're the small version of the solar panels, so they don't produce a lot of power. The way they're oriented isn't necessarily the most effective way that we could have placed them, but it's just a trickle. It's just a little thing to keep the ship going while we're building it so that we don't have to worry about draining the power from our batteries. We've got 4 batteries on the ship now. We're going to be adding more before we're done. And perhaps most importantly, you can see how the landing gear system is working. You can see the yellow piston over here pushed out this whole assembly. And then we had the red pistons that extended down with the landing gear on the end. And you can see they're barely reaching the same level as the drill heads. So we have to be very careful about how we land with this ship to not damage the drills, to not damage the surface of whatever we're landing on. Say we're landing on this platform. I don't mind so much if we dig up the ground when we're landing on snow or stone, but when we're landing on our own constructions, we would rather not damage them. So one of the things that has occurred to me as a potential option, if we do want to be landing using the landing gears on our own facilities, is to have a dedicated landing area for this ship with elevated sections around where you could land with the landing gears, and then a depression in the middle so that the drill heads don't contact anything as you're coming down. That would be one solution. The other solution would be to find another way to put all of this stuff in place so that we get down a little bit farther with the landing gears, and then we don't have to worry about the drill heads. The landing gears will be hitting the surface before the drill heads do. Different options. We'll take a look at what's going on towards the end of the build when it comes to modifying these things. The main thing now that we need to look at for the ship is mobility, because currently all it can do is sit here on its one spindly little leg and look pretty. It can't really fly. It can't do much of anything. So what we need to add, and what we will have in place to show you for the next episode, is gyroscopes. We're going to have at least 4 in various different places on the ship, not attached to the drills this time. Lots and lots of thrusters. I specifically left room for an abundance of thrusters because it's a big heavy ship with all the drills. It's going to be even heavier when both of these cargo containers get filled up with ore. We want to make sure that we have enough thrusters that we can get the ship up in the air again and also be able to control it while it's fully laden in the air. We don't want to be flying around with basically a temperamental brick on firecrackers. We want to make sure that we actually are able to control the thing. We need a connector on here that will allow us to connect to a connector that we've already put in place on the other side of the solar panels up here. So it's on the side of the outpost where we don't have to worry too much about hitting anything that's connected to the outpost. It's just the connector. We've got lots of room to come in, get close, attach to it, and potentially dock there, which would make it a little bit easier. We wouldn't have to worry so much about the landing gears, but we'll see how that goes. We need ejectors to deal with the stone that we're pulling in from the drills, and again, we want to make sure that we're putting the ejectors in a position where they aren't bombarding our own ship with the boulders that they're throwing out, trying to get them away from the ship. So we need to keep that in mind, and it could be that what we'll end up doing, depending on how the ship gets used and what we expect to be using the ship for, is have secondary storage just for stone so that we can drill down, gather the ore and the stone all at the same time, and then as the ship is leaving, set the ejectors to get rid of all the stone after the fact kind of thing. So that's an option. We'll get that sorted out in time for the next episode, at least well enough to test it. And of course, more batteries, because whether it's the little bit of extra charge we get in each battery as we build it, the 30% charged state that the batteries are in, that helps. That'll help us get up and running, but also just having power on the ship so that we can do the drilling, run all the drills, run all the thrusters, do all the things that we need to do without worrying about running out of power and relying on 4 puny solar panels to get us out of the mess that we find ourselves in. The other option, of course, is always to strip down the batteries and come back down with materials, replace the batteries and do it that way, but that's kind of wasteful. It's wasteful in terms of the materials that you're using, losing the power cells. When you destroy the battery and having to create more power cells, there's a loss there, and we would like to avoid that if we can. So the goal for the end of the next episode is to have this thing in a position where we can take it out and test it. We might not be able to get it out and do the testing, but at least we'll be able to show you exactly what we've got to work with so that we can go out and do the testing, and then hopefully it survives the testing so that we can get it back with some materials and make revisions based on what we determined is working and what isn't. So if you want to be notified about that episode, as always, you can subscribe to my channel. You can also follow me on social media for updates that way. Social media links are in the information box below the video. Leave your comments and feedback, of course. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.